Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
and we are going to discuss some interesting topics today related to the Maryland budget. Ethan, I just happened to see a snippet from The View. Nothing that I watched. As a matter of fact, I think anybody who watches The View probably lost their remote control. However, Wes Moore, our governor of Maryland, was on there and indicated that he was about to give the Maryland voters one of the biggest tax break in Maryland budget history. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I too am aware of that claim where he says that over this past legislative session, he did provide the largest tax break in Maryland history.
A bold claim, by the way.
A bold claim, especially when spending is going up by over 13% a year, and he described his own budget as a crisis because of the 16% deficits that we are headed towards. It obviously does not pass the sniff test to go on a national television program and claim that you provided not just a tax cut, but the largest.
When every single fee and that Maryland can assess is going up.
Well, so you are correct. Not only is it fees, it is sales taxes, it is income taxes. However, what he is referring to is in the litany of all of these revenue increases, there is one tax decrease that he gave. It is legitimate. It is true that on the bottom 96% of income earners in our state are going to get an average of a 62% deduction in the income taxes that they pay as a result of this tax budget.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
It does sound pretty good, particularly if you ignore everything else that was done during the legislative session.
Right. So it's kind of like going on the used car lot, right? Sounds pretty good. It's a really good car. And, I'm going to give you a great payment plan.
Right.
Meanwhile, you're actually going to pay 10 times what the car is worth when all is said and done.
And 2 times the amount of interest.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what's in the weeds? What is Governor Moore not telling us? One thing I can tell you right off the bat is this is the biggest budget in Maryland history. Oh, sure. This budget is one of the biggest on the entire East Coast of the United States.
Sure. I mean, if you just think about the fact that as the state of Maryland just last year collected about $27 billion in taxes, fees, everything. But they are increasing just the spending to public schools. Forget the spending on police, EMTs, infrastructure. Just schools are going up by $3.8 billion a year. That right there is a more than 13% increase in spending every single year, not including things such as making sure a paramedic is going to be there if something bad happens.
Or a bridge is rebuilt.
Or if a bridge collapses.
Yeah, I just looked at Google Earth. That the area where that bridge used to be is just gone. It's like they're not even going to rebuild it. Yeah, just leave it. Right. It's expensive. People have to drive, whatever.
I don't know if you remember this, but back the Big Dig in Boston.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, I remember the Big Dig. I am from Boston. So that when the ceiling started falling on people, they started paying attention.
Absolutely. And I'm afraid that this rebuilding of the bridge is actually there in Baltimore as a result of that tragic accident that caused the whole bridge to collapse. Could end up being something very similar to where it becomes a, so to speak, bridge to nowhere, as the acronyms have piled up over the years for other infrastructure projects.
Right. So getting back to Governor Moore's budget, one of his proposals for this tax cut is that he would eliminate all itemization for people in the mid level, 100,000 to 200,000. They could no longer itemize, which of course that demographic itemizes a lot.
Right. And I mean, if you think about it, one of the great things that we have in America is that we are amongst the most charitable societies on earth. I mean, I believe it is America and the nation of Israel are the two most, as a percentage of GDP being given to charity, is the two of us. and then you have number 3 and 4, which are significantly further down the list. And so, that is a tradition that has been kind of honored in part by giving tax deductions when we as Americans donate our money to charitable causes. And so that is something that was planned to be taken away, proposed. I don't believe that it was. However, what we're finding is that because of these massive increases of this $3.8 billion, which is kind of set in stone as an automatic increase for the public schools, all of these things that are proposed one year that may not go through completely end up coming back the next year 2-3 times bigger than proposed.
So yeah, the delegation did shoot down the itemization being taken out of the tax code. However, they did approve a lot of things. And I mean fee after fee after fee. Everything from the inheritance tax to your DMV fees to all the other things. Taxes on cannabis. You remember when cannabis was first passed, it was going to be, we're going to use that money for, chemical recovery for people and this and that and XYZ. And it was also going to provide clean weed for the kids so they didn't buy it on the streets. Well, that's gone because now they're taxing that weed so high that kids can't afford it anymore. They're going back to the streets. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't tax weed? The guy on the street corner, he doesn't tax weed. He's like, hey, here you go. So, that's another tax that they're putting in. All of these fees. And by the way, folks, let's remember all of these fees they raise are just a money grab. That's what it is. They are absolutely trying to recoup this tax break, which isn't a tax break at all, through all these other fees. Water, sewer, electric, all of it going up.
Yeah. We started out this year at rated as the 13th highest tax and fee state in America. The final numbers still need to be calculated, but it appears that after just this year's increases, we are going to jump from number 13 to maybe being as high as the 9th highest tax and fee state in America. And then, of course, the same thing repeats itself next year and next year again, all because of that $3.8 billion that the governor stated is going to lead to our 16% deficits, which are obviously unsustainable. But yes, it becomes almost a comedy to the cannabis. It went from 9% taxes to 12% taxes. Gambling, which was 15%, and all of that was supposed to go towards the schools. And it's now been up to 20%, right? And so still with all of that, there's still so much more that is going on. And what happens is that when these statements are made, and this is, of course, is the danger, right? When there is whether you want to call it dishonesty or whether you want to call it just a reframing the point.
Reframing.
The
politicians love to reframe, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
On both sides of the house, by the way, they love to reframe things.
Absolutely. And the thing is that if you're going to say there's a 62% tax decrease for income taxes, and you obviously are ignoring everything else, which far eclipses it 10, 12, 13 times over, obviously that's not honesty. But the thing is that there actually are a number of strategies that are used to essentially, dare I say, lie to us, or perhaps we should simply say reframing to keep it politically correct.
Yeah.
But that is one strategy that is used. One trick that is used is that we always have to keep in mind, okay, when we are told that, this is the number and it just doesn't pass the sniff test, right? Like no one has to study the budget to know that if we have our expenses going up by 13% a year, that if a politician then says, oh, I gave a tax decrease of $62 to the average taxpayer, we know that something is off with that. But there is also another thing as well.
If they're giving you $62 back and you're paying $400 extra at the DMV, obviously they're lying. The middle class in Maryland is getting crushed, and they're going to get crushed even more.
Yes. I mean, it was something that was stated in Frederick County at the last county commissioners meeting that about 1/3 of Frederick County residents are behind on their property tax bill.
A whole third.
Yep.
33.3% of all Frederick households are behind on this.
Absolutely tragic number. Also, as we've talked about in the past, it's looking like while all the numbers for the entire state haven't come out, but they've come out for large portions of the state, about 20% of Marylanders are not paying their utility, unable to pay their utility bills. So when you say that the middle class is shrinking and getting hit and hit hard as a result of all of these spending increases and tax increases, et cetera, you are not understating the dilemma.
And another thing that I hate what these politicians do is they try to fool the middle class and the lower classes with the statement that they're going to make the rich pay their fair share.
Mhm.
The rich are going to pay their fair share. No, they're not. These rich people that they're talking about are going to leave, just like they did in California and New York and every place else. If you tax these companies and you tax them to the point where they cannot make a profit, they are going to leave. And especially in the mid-Maryland area, we got a major problem. We got Pennsylvania and we got West Virginia and we got Virginia, all of them within striking distance of these manufacturers. There's no incentive for them to stay in Maryland if we're churning into the communist state of Maryland or California East.
Mhm. And was something that accentuates that point, illustrates it better than any other single instance from this last legislative session I'm aware of, is that there was a Democrat delegate. I mean, he's still a delegate, and in the midst of all of these tax increases, he actually stood up on the floor and said, "I am having, because of these tax increases. In this case, it was one of the sales taxes that hit his company. He said, I am going to move my company from Maryland to Virginia." This is a Democrat Maryland delegate saying, because of the tax increases that we are doing, I am literally moving my business and therefore all of my employment opportunities and all of the tax revenues to another state.
And I believe he was in an IT type situation, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, just for our viewers understand, Westmore's budget also taxes IT properties now. So, in other words, an IT company, startup, whatever, they're going to be paying a lot more taxes to use that Wi-Fi and to run their IT company here in the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
And they don't have to. They can work from wherever they can call the business is.
Mhm.
So of course they're going to throw it over the lines into states that don't do this insane procedure. By the way, California is another one that does this. Drove most of their IT companies out of the state.
Right. I mean, Silicon Valley was starting to get empty so fast that they actually had to, I don't know if they officially declared a state of emergency,
Yeah.
but they certainly phrased it that way in the media as what can we do to keep more Silicon Valley companies from leaving, which of course have been a tremendous source of revenue for California. And we also have a Silicon Valley of sorts on I-270 between Frederick and DC. And so the fact that we have clearly already put that at risk and are losing employment there definitely speaks ill for the future. Basically just an even worsening situation from what's already been described for our financial situation. And one of the other ways that gets kind of like hidden is there's another statement that our governor makes frequently, is he says that he moved our state from to a structural surplus, a structural deficit to a structural surplus. And of course, that always gets a standing ovation, when that statement is made.
Yeah, no, on The View, he got a standing ovation for that. It's a bunch of gobbledygook.
Well, but the thing is what is he saying?
Yeah.
What does he mean? Like, where does he come up with that?
Nobody knows what structural, whatever. Nobody knows what that means.
Well, essentially, you are correct, and that's the reason why that's
So
said.
edify us.
Right.
Hit it. Come on, hit it.
How many people really know? Well, what it is what structural means is essentially if you take out all the things you want to take out and don't include them.
Right.
A very similar.
Hey, I need a structural budget for my house. I'm going to take out all the bills. Then I got a structural surplus.
That's exactly.
As they put my butt out on the road with my family in a U-Haul van.
That's exactly.
I'll be living in a van down by the river.
Yes, and
a structural surplus.
And so why?
Hold on, let's go back to that. Explain as succinctly as you can, what he's saying by a structural deficit to a structural surplus.
Sure. So let's say that we, like, for example, this year, the big issue with the budget was we had a $3 billion deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously that's a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And he even declared our budget a crisis because it's headed towards
Just a few months ago, on a previous show, we covered the fact that he had declared a budget emergency because there was not enough money to pay the bills that they're making.
And again, it just, just you don't have to be a genius, just common sense. Common sense is very is a powerful form of intelligence. Common sense would tell you that you can't say we have a surplus when all these other things are happening. So the fact that he threw in the word structural has to mean something that reframes the conversation, right? So what it is that you'd have to ask him specifically what he's not including in that term structural deficit, but I'm going to assume with great confidence that what he's referring to, he just isn't including any of that $3.8 billion we're increasing to the public schools every year. And the reason is because that does get debated every year. So you could say,
hold on, just to clarify, that's the blueprint for Maryland, covered in a previous episode, actually 2 previous episodes of this podcast.
Yes, it is the single biggest issue in our state, because not only from a financial perspective, but also because of the effect it has on our children. The effect on what unfortunately has actually been associated with a decrease in academic performance, and yet an exponential increase in spending.
Yeah, like I said, we covered that in 2 other podcasts. But so he's basically saying, hey, we have a structural surplus. And it'd be like you with a household saying, I have a surplus in my household because I'm not going to include my mortgage, my car note, or my insurance payments. So I got a surplus.
Yeah, well,
by the way, and then I'll go out and buy another car because with that surplus that I have. That's basically what the state of Maryland is doing right now.
That's exactly what we're doing.
And the problem is that we have a blueprint. We have a blueprint, not the blueprint of Maryland. We have a blueprint for exactly where this is going to go. It's called California. Governor Newsom has said the exact same things as Governor Moore. It seems to be a Democratic leadership talking point to use these catchphrases, but really never address the elephant in the room, which is you're spending more money than you can make or reasonably bring in from your taxpayers without crushing them. Mm-hmm. California is absolutely being devastated. Their economy is in shambles. Companies leaving left and right. Every wealthy person is trying to beat feet out of California as quickly as possible. They're going to places like Texas, Oklahoma, and other places, Florida, the big red states that don't tax companies as badly as these ones do. We know what's going to happen in Maryland, yet we are on a crash course for this exact same situation.
And an unfortunate example from California in that regards is the movie industry. So obviously Hollywood has been the center of the movie industry for 100 years. And movies have been moving out of California so fast. And California has done a great number of tax breaks and other incentives to keep the movie industry in California, and it is still fleeing because even though they are giving the movie industry special treatment, everything else California has done to raise taxes and fees and everything else has still made it so expensive to just do anything there, that even with the tax breaks, it is still cheaper for movie production companies to move the industry to other states, other countries. But Florida, New York, Texas is getting a lot of that business right now.
The funny part about California, too, is your alleged Democratic liberal elitists are also talking out. Bill Maher is just one example. I just saw a recent talking point from another A-list celebrity. They were talking about trying to rebuild from the fires, and how 10,000 homes had been lost in the fires almost a year ago now. And do you know how many permits they've issued for rebuilding?
No.
out of those thousands and thousands of 4 wow. Permits have been issued because they make the red tape and the ridiculous nature of the bureaucracy out there, and everything is taxed. You put in a rebuilding plan, you got to do this plan, that plan, and all of them have fees. All of them costs. Bill Maher talked about having a shed in his backyard. He wanted to rebuild. It's been 7 years. He lives in LA. 7 years, and he still has not had his shed rebuilt.
Yeah.
You can't rebuild a shed in 7 years.
Yes.
This is what we're headed for, people. This is what Maryland is going to be if we continue down this track of tax and spend, and passing on, making the rich pay their fair share, which is all hooey. It's the rich now are $100,000 to $200,000, right? That is the area that's really going to be impacted by Governor Moore the most.
Yes.
If he takes away itemization, the taxes, it's getting lower and lower, folks. It really is the middle class. I mean, come on, let's face reality. $100,000 is the middle class nowadays.
Yes, and what it is that why? So there was a total of $1.6 billion in tax and fee increases, and the rest came from borrowing money. The rest came from cutting spending, and also just taking expenses and saying the counties are now responsible for them, which just means that instead of us sending more taxes to the state, we're going to send more taxes to the county.
Now, that's an important point. Let's cover that again.
Yeah.
What the state did was they transferred their debt to the counties.
Mhm.
So, yes, your state taxes may go down or reframed, whatever you want to call them, but your county taxes have to go up because the state has now deferred spending to the counties. For instance, we're picking up the pension plans for all the teachers.
Mhm.
That used to be a state function under the state of Maryland. Now the counties will have to pick that up. Where do you think the county is going to find that money?
Mhm. And it's going to be from every one of us.
Your property taxes in this county are going to go through the roof.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's that pension movement from the state to the counties focused just on teachers, which also puts our public school teachers, their pensions, at greater risk. So it's very unfortunate what's happened with specifically the movement of the pensions down to the counties, because what it does is it actually makes the teachers' pensions, because it was their pensions specifically that were moved, it makes them less financially secure because the counties are simply less financially strong than the state is. And so these are very unfortunate things that are being done. But as far as the statement, again, another instance of reframing. The statement that the tax increases and such are going to be felt by the highest income earners. It's not that it's completely untrue, kind of like with the statement that there was a 62% tax break, and technically it was the largest tax break if you just ignore everything else.
Right.
It's also equally true to say that the rich, the highest paid income earners got the biggest tax increases, as long as you ignore everything else. Of the $1.6 billion in tax and fee increases, $800 million was increased for income taxes to the top 6%. Of course, that ignores the the $800 billion in property tax, fee, and sales tax increases that affected everyone else. So there actually was an equal distribution there. It also does not count for the fact that there were some cuts, not huge, but there were some cuts to our disabled individuals in Maryland and the support that they receive. And what happens is you can only increase taxes on the highest income earners so much. This was a 13% increase on their taxes. How many years can you increase one group's taxes by 13% every year before essentially it does catch up, and what was once wealthy individuals are not wealthy individuals as a result? What happens before that, obviously, is what that Maryland state delegate did that we were speaking about just a few minutes ago. They move, and with that, they take all of the tax revenue that they're producing, they take all of their revenue and tax producing assets with them, and they simply move. And therefore, we are headed in a no-win situation. And that is why I agree with the governor 100% when he called our budget a crisis.
I will say this, I'm a moderate. I know you're a Republican, and we are, we differ on some things. But when I look at the budget and how it breaks down, people who are voting for fiscal responsibility, people who are voting for us staying within a budget, people who are voting for us to actually make a budget that we don't have to increase taxes or fees across the board, it goes exactly by party lines, Republican and Democrat. The Republicans are for sensible financial spending, and the Democrats are voting for willy-nilly spending, tax and spend programs left and right. It is as obvious as the nose on your face.
And the unfortunate reality is that it's all unnecessary. This is all self-inflicted. I mean, if you go to other states around us, whether it be Pennsylvania, West Virginia, etc., they're not running deficits. They don't have a crisis on their hands. As a matter of fact, West Virginia actually did a genuine tax decrease, not a reframing tax decrease.
Yeah,
And
not a structural tax surplus. They actually had a real surplus,
yeah,
and the governor gave it to his people.
yes,
And by the way, you can't find a more, I mean, yes, there's a Republican influence, but West Virginia is a very purple state.
yeah.
Lots of Democrats, lots of Republicans. They get along, they pass government. This is how government's supposed to work. And by the way, many Marylanders are running to West Virginia.
And that, of course, is another issue, is that when you look at our counties, our counties that border West Virginia, the West Virginia's population, people are flooding to West Virginia. The populations are expected to increase by over 40% within just the next 3 years. And then you have our counties, which are also growing, but they are not growing anywhere close to what West Virginia is. And West Virginia is doing it with less crime, less drugs. And while there still is a difference where, their academics are below our states, our academics in Maryland are dropping fast enough that I don't know exactly how many years, but it inevitably there is going to be a parity there, even on the education front.
Right. So what we're telling our viewers is this: do the research. Don't fall for the Fugazi. Okay, Fugazi. He's from New York. He knows what a Fugazi. Fugazi is a gem that looks like a real one, but it's fake. Okay, and you're going to pay $1 million for something that's basically a piece of glass.
Yes.
It's a Fugazi, and I'm going to tell you right now: all this talk of a budget cut or a tax cut for the middle class and the poor is a Fugazi.
Mm-hmm. If it needs to be reframed, it wasn't true the first time it was said, and it's not going to be true the second. Stay educated, stay involved, and absolutely good things will come as a result.
Hey, this has been Mark Flynn.
Ethan Lowen.
And this has been Mid-Maryland Votes. If you like us, if you find us informative, if we're interested, or if you just don't like us at all, follow us anyway. You can hate us long distance. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel as well. Like us, follow us, and we would love to see you next week back here with another show. Have a great night.